Hi, I'm Chris from airwindows, and I'm showing you a plugin today that you kinda sorta already had. But I was asked for this, so I thought I would comply. This is a plugin called EQ. And the thing about EQ is it ended up going into a plugin called C-Strip, which had all kinds of extra stuff added to it. And it had EQ, and it had the compressor, there's a variation on Buttercomp, it had a gate, it had all kinds of stuff. But I was asked, can we just have just EQ? Because I liked it. And I thought that would be a nice thing, because I always like splitting stuff out into its individual component parts. Here's EQ. Flat, it's exactly the same as if it wasn't even there. Like, it looks as if it's going on and off, but a lot of these bits, like low pass and high pass, if they're at the bottom or top amounts, they're disabling themselves. And the treble, mid, and bass, if it's at 0, it's disabling itself. And the output gain, if the output gain is at 0 dB, then it's disabling itself. So if I do this, no change. But we can also do your usual EQ things. Like suck all the mids out, or put it in. Play with the lows. Now the lows, funny thing about these lows is you don't hear them that much, partly because it's a digital EQ, so it's very clean. It's based on IIR filters, so it doesn't have the sort of ringy alien quality of your elaborate digital EQs like your channel EQ. It is, however, giving bass, and I can demonstrate that by going, see, 0, 0, 0. We're still not doing anything here. And if I crank the bass, we will start getting overloads in here. Or maybe not that much of an overload, but it does sound bigger. Give an overload by bringing it up a little bit. So here we have the shelving frequencies. It's not a very steep shelf, but it's sort of a tone EQ rather than a elaborate sculpting EQ. It's very gentle in sound. And then we've got these high pass and low pass. And those are slightly unusual as well. They're designed to sort of trap in the frequency extremes in a way that'll work well on individual tracks. Oh, that's the frequency, that's not low pass. As you can see, it's got a slightly odd extreme there, but it's pretty well behaved, and that's partly just due to the algorithm that we're using. The low pass kind of tries to step on TISY 10K stuff, but it's not really trying to whack the super extreme highs that much. You can see it's way down, but it does have that little lift going up to the extremes and then sort of turning down again. So what you can do is sort of engage it just a little bit. Or a little bit more. And you end up getting a sort of nice top end sound out of that. By the same token, the high pass isn't too steep either. Like the extreme lows are here. And if we whack it, you can still kind of hear what's going on, but you allow some lows and it still kind of feels like the extreme lows are down there. It'll tighten them up a bit, but without any unpleasant characteristics. And you even have this special little mid-rangey telephone sound in here. So it's very simple. That's EQ by Airwindows. It is now a audio unit and Mac, Windows, and Linux VST. All of this stuff is supported by my Patreon. And the more I get out of that, firstly, I'm actually more comfortable and not panicking all the time from running out of money. But I also inevitably turn it back into just other gear and learn how to use that and learn what I can do. For instance, here's a pile of jacks with a little piece of bent metal. What am I going to do with these? Well, you'll see, because, and particularly if you're on my Patreon, I'll make a little post about it. It'll still be on the open YouTube, so it's not like I'm hiding it from anybody, but it'll be a little more way of having an alert. I'll be trying to make things out of stuff like this, and I have many ideas and can direct you to the sources from which I get things. I spent all day today grinding away, figuring out how to make optoisolators out of cadmium sulfide cells and LEDs and stuff. And honestly, I just love the heck out of that sort of thing, because it's like, oh, you can take this little part that costs $1.50 and this little part that costs 29 cents, and you combine them together and you get this thing where you could put it on channels of a Eurorack mixer, and the channels can become their own little trigger things. Like you run the trigger inputs into those, and they do a sort of little percussive sound, which would work for hi-hats, or it would work for all manner of stuff. And you don't necessarily even need to have power going into the, they call them Vactrols. And Vactrols are very cool because they're the same technology that's in old, I think, Tektronix, LA2A, I believe. It's the same technology that's in old classic compressors that are known to have special sounds for guitarists, bassists, studio folks. All of this stuff is connected. It all kind of ties together. Did you know that with those fancy classic compressors that run through optoisolators, the entire signal is very likely running through the CDS cell? It's running through a special little, like the entire audio that you've got is going through this mysterious chemical layer that is light sensitive. And that's part of what gives it the sound, because the light sensitivity could also have a trace. It reacts differently to whether it's been lit up recently or not. There's just this whole organic world of stuff that's all kind of coming together. I think the future is going to be very interesting for music-oriented and indeed synthesizer-oriented people, because just the way to tie all this stuff together is very cool. And then sometimes you want to split stuff apart, and here's EQ, which is a big chunk of C-strip, but it's a little more manageable because there's a little less to it. And I hope you like it. Thanks.